Now, before we start entering in overtime, we need to define what overtime is in our project. As you recall back in an earlier training video, when I set up my project calendar, I defined a working day as an 8-hour day. So anything over 8 hours would be overtime. If your typical work day is 5 hours, then of course anything over 5 hours would be overtime as well. So, how much is this going to cost you to assign, let's say, one resource working on a task, 1 overtime hour? Again, back in an earlier training video, we set up our resources in the resource sheet view, including setting up their standard rate, but not their overtime rate just yet. So to go ahead and set that up, come over here and right-click on the view bar, go down to the resource sheet, and there's the resource name, the standard rate, and oh, there's the overtime rate. What's that doing there? We haven't gone over that yet. Well, I entered it in, but in any case, you'll notice in that earlier training video when you typed in the standard rate, Project did not automatically calculate the time and a half for overtime and enter it in over here. You have to do that manually. So you have to figure this out on your own, that if you want to go off the standard overtime, which is time and a half, you've got $15 an hour. Half of that is $7.50, so for time and a half, 15 plus $7.50 is $22.50. Of course, you can enter in more if you'd like, double that for double time, or you can enter in a lot less, which is very criminal. I wouldn't do it. Let's go ahead and undo that. You notice that when I did that, Project did not flag me and say, hey, this is a lot less or this is a lot more. It's a flexible field, so you can enter in as much as you would like or as little. Okay. Now when it comes to entering in overtime work, there are 3 views that I want to show you. I want to show you the task and usage views and also the task form. But first of all, let's go ahead and enter in overtime in the task usage view by coming over here and right-clicking on the view bar. And, well, if you don't see a view here, then you can go to more views. In any case, task usage, it lists all the tasks, and below each task, those resources or a single resource assigned to it, you can see there. And you can see over in the indicator column that for each task that's been completed, it's got a blue check mark. So let's go down to the next task that has not been completed, and it's going to be Create Outline. And let me come up here with that task selected, go to the Task tab, to the Editing group, because when I click on Scroll to Task, it's going to take me over to the hours that that resource has been assigned to on that task to show me those days that the resource is working on. So scroll to, and there we go. 8 hours on, let's see, we got to eyeball it, Rider 1, 8 hours on, let's see, Wednesday, and that pop-up September the 8th, 2010, and of course the next day would be September the 9th. Okay, let's say that something came up that Rider 1 had to work an extra couple of hours. Now without any overtime, if I add the 2 hours here and hit enter, it's going to add an additional day of work. Well, you know, just 2 hours the next day, not a full day. And so the duration of the task will be 2 1/4. Hit enter. There we go, 2 1/4, and it goes to the next day. Now, the problem I have with that is that it's going to probably push out the next task unless the task started a lot earlier or can start earlier. And if it doesn't, then it pushes out that task, it can push out the next task, and so on. So like a domino effect, push out the project's end date. Unless I want to come over here and enter in some overtime. Of course, overtime is going to cost time and a half, $22.50 for the 2 hours, so it'll be $45 for the 2 hours. But hey, if I finish the project on time, it'll probably save me more money than if I delayed it out and didn't pay the overtime. So to go ahead and enter in the overtime, just 2 hours for the extra 2 hours that we have over here, if you look over here in the table, I don't see any overtime work fields, do you? No. To go ahead and enter in the overtime field, come up here and right click on any column header, and you can do this in any table. If you're missing a field or you want to add a field, come down here and click on Insert Column, type in the first couple of letters of what you're looking for, over for, there we go, overtime work. Select that, and to this point I don't have any hours assigned in overtime here to any resource, except I'm going to do it right now for Rider 1. Come down here, and of the 18 hours, 2 of those hours are going to be overtime. Now before I hit enter on the keyboard, I want you to see over here that the 2 hours will be brought back into the last day of the original duration of 2 days. Hit enter, and there you go. Now you could say, hey, wait a second, the overtime was 1 hour that day, 1 hour the next day. Well, you can go ahead and adjust that in your actuals when you enter in the actuals, but as far as project scheduling and budget calculations are concerned, it does not matter when those overtime hours are worked, only that they are worked, so it just went ahead and loaded it at the back here on the last day. So again, when you enter in your actuals, you can go ahead and update that. and say it's 10 hours this day or 9 hours that day, 9 hours the next day. And in fact, if you want, you can enter in your actuals here if you want to right click over in the grid and bring up the actual work field. And of course it expands because now instead of just one row here for work, you got actual V. No, it's cutting off the W because the column is too small, so you can click and drag that out. There you go, you can see actual work. And because it widened the rows, we have to scroll down to get back to our task here that we were working on. There we go. And you can see over here there's the actual work completed because this task was actually halfway done before we started working on it or applying the overtime hours. And so you can go ahead and type in for the actual work for this day, type in 10 hours, or you can say, look, it was actually 9 hours for that day, hit enter. And then of course it's going to update the other fields here, the calculations, and they may appear off as far as what you're comfortable with, but again, if it's not where you want it to be at, it's because we haven't finished entering in the actuals. We haven't marked this complete. So when I go ahead and I look at this, and you can see down below that Writer 1 is working on the next task, and you can see it split that off from 4 hours that day to a half hour this day and 3.5 that day because it's trying to fill up the time saying, hey, you can start earlier now because this hasn't been completed yet. Well, when we enter in the actual of 9 hours, it pushes it back out to its 4 hours here, okay? So in any case, you can go ahead and enter in the actuals there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that several times here. There we go. Well, we'll leave the 18 hours there because I want to take you to another view, the resource usage view, to enter in the overtime there. Let's go ahead and right click on the view bar, go to the resource usage, and it has a list of all the resources and below each resource the tasks that they're assigned to. So depending upon what you're looking for or what your focus is it the resource and the task, or is it the task and the resource is assigned underneath? Then you can choose the task usage or the resource usage view. And again, over here in the table, just like the task usage view, I don't see any overtime, so hey, you can go ahead and enter in those fields, any field that you want to in any table, just by giving it a right click. Although I will say this, while you can insert this column, the overtime field, in other views like the Gantt chart, you won't be able to enter in the overtime hours, just, well, for right now, in the views that we're working on, the resource and the task usage views, okay? Scroll over and click on Add New Column and type in OVER and overtime work. There we go. Click and drag that out so I can see it, and then in between the two column headers till I can see arrows pointing in opposite directions, and click and drag that in a bit, okay, so it's not so spread out, and then scroll back. And then Writer 1 was working on Create Outline, right? We increased the amount of work from 16 to 18, but all those 2 hours, remember we undid that, we said it was 0, so I can come over here and add those 2 hours there. Before we do that, let's come up here with this task selected to the Task tab, to the Editing group, click on Scroll to Task, and it looks like it was pretty close over here anyways, but I thought it might bring it a little bit closer. Well, let me go ahead and bring it over and double click to snap it to that column. Close enough. You can see over here there's the 2 hours, increase it for the overtime, hit enter, and there we go, it updates it, and of course my project will do this to me from time to time. Text wrapping, so it expands these rows here, but that's okay, it's not messing with the overtime that I entered in, so it brought the 2 hours, again, as you saw in the previous view, over to Thursday because of project schedule and budget calculations. And like I said, you can go ahead and enter in your actuals and say it's 9 hours that day, 9 hours the next day. Okay. The last view that I want to show you, we can go ahead and undo this. So it's back to 18 hours, but we haven't entered in the overtime. We can go ahead and right click, go back to the Gantt chart, and then come up here on the View tab, and let's split the view by checking the details. And then down below in the task form, to enter in the overtime work, you have to change the task form by right-clicking in a blank area from resource and predecessors to work. And there we go. It displays the work, amount of work, and then the overtime doesn't have any. Let's go ahead and increase that to 2 and click OK. And there we go, from 2.25 days to 2 days. Cool. So, hey, whatever view works best for you, or whatever view that you're in, if you don't want to get out of that view and you want to go ahead and enter in some actuals or overtime, just go ahead and right click and insert it as a column, or bring up the task form and right click there to bring up your work. Let me go ahead and close this task form by hovering over the split bar and double clicking really fast, or you can come up there and uncheck the details box. Now, if you haven't noticed, if you really pay attention during these videos or you're working on the exercises, at least in Level 2 here, there are some flaws in my project. Well, maybe not flaws, but if you take a look at it for the first task here, examine software, notice that Writer 1's assigned to it, but also the next task. And what's interesting is that even though he's working on that task, and this one's starting a little bit ahead of time where he's working on both, I mean, you can assign overtime if he's over allocated to help with that, but also he's working on this task as well. And the reason why this one doesn't show over allocated with the red dude saying, hey, you've got him working on these other tasks here, because those tasks have been completed. So if they weren't completed, like I come up here to, well, I try to eyeball it, search internal documentation, and let's right click and change it from 100% to 0% complete. Hey, the red dude's come up saying, hey, what are you doing, man? You've got this task that he's working on at the same time he's starting that one. So yeah, I put some project flaws in here, or maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe this is the way it's supposed to go, and we just assign them overtime. I mean, in a perfect project, I'd rather have them. Let me try to click off to get rid of this floating field here. Looks like it's, there we go. In a perfect project, it'd be nice to have one task finished, then start the next one, then start the next one, and not have, well, start this one, and then go ahead and start this one about the same time, and then this one can be delayed. Because notice that this one can slip out before it affects the end date, because no other task is tied to it. So I do this because I want you to go ahead and do some critical thinking on your own when you look through this and go, hey, this wasn't the same project we started in level 1, but something you can pull off to the side and go, if I was project manager, let me try to figure out and work on these exercises. If I assign this resource, how come it's doing this, and what is this project telling me? What are the relationships, and why do we have Writer 1 working on all these? Can I go ahead and reassign somebody else to work on them? Again, you're the manager. These are exercises that I hope you'll take advantage of and learn more about what's going on with the projects that I've created here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And like I said, this was something that we've marked completed, so it's not going to say that Writer 1 down here is going to be over allocated. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.